Daf Kuf Mem Ches Amud Beis, 3 lines from the top. Continuing with the discussion between Rav Bar Rav Chanan and Abaye. V'amalei Rav Bar Rav Chanan la Abaye. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Loy Mesapkin v'loy Metapkin v'loy Meraktin b'yont. You can't clap the hands or beat on the chest or dance on yont. So these are also, when these are done in the form of rejoicing, they're also the Rabbanan also because the person might come to fix an instrument. If he's allowed to do this type of clapping and dancing, that's normally associated with a klei zemer, with musical instruments. He might come to fix a musical instrument, so they answer this on Yontiv. Some of these cases, Metapkin may be done also, Rahman Aslan, for a sign of Avelus, which is also on Yontiv and also on Chol Hamoed as well. So that would be also not only Yontiv, but also Chol Hamoed on the musical instruments. If it's done in the form of, rejoicing, that would be also on Yontiv and not Chol Hamoed. But he asked them, it says, the Mishnah says, it's also V'chasin the Avdin v'loy Amrin v'loy Midi. And we see that people do these things, and we don't object. We don't say anything. Well, the Tameh, he said, according to you, that you say that what we have to give hasra and we have to warn in all the cases where you see someone doing an Isser, Rava said the person shouldn't sit at the opening of a mavi. A mavi, a side street that's open into the Rishus HaRavim, so you're allowed to carry with it if there's a lechi or a kar, a beam, vertical post or a cross beam. So Rava said that a person shouldn't sit at the opening because there might be the ilma migdar lechefetz. Maybe an object that he has will roll away from him. It'll roll onto the street, into the Rishus HaRavim, and without realizing, without thinking, he'll go and bring it from the street into the mavi, and he'll come to carrying that. That's hachnasa. And so therefore he shouldn't sit on them. Rava said it's also to sit at the opening to the mavi. And we see that women come and they take their buckets and they put it at the opening of the mavi. They do put it in that place, right close to the Rishus HaRabim. We don't object. We don't say anything. So why don't you object into that case? So it's a shame give different hesberim why that, he says, why is that a stronger question rather than the case of clapping? Maybe the pshat is that was more widespread. It was more widespread and more out in the public in a way that it was more public violation rather than the case of the dancing or the clapping, which perhaps was less widespread and perhaps less public. It was done more in private houses, but here it's in the street, it's in the mavi, and it's done right out in the open. And the Rabbana don't say anything, they don't object. Ella, what's the pshat? Why not? So, Ella hanach li Yisrael mutav sheyu shaygig and value mezidim. Leave Yisrael, it's better than the shaygig, rather than mezidim. Meaning that if they're not going to listen, and better that they should be doing it b'shoygeg and not do it b'mezer, intentionally violating it. So he thought to say that's only with an Isser, that's a Rabban. But if it's involving an Isser D'Oraisa, we would not apply this principle, and we would give them a straw and warn them and restrain them. Even if they won't listen, we should try to. But the Gemara says no, it's not so. It's not correct. There's no chilik if it's a deraisa or the rabbanan. In either event, we do apply this principle. We say mutav shiv shaygim value do mizidim, and the raya is that is Yom Kippurim deraisa. You have to add on to Yom Kippur. You have to begin the fast somewhat before actual nightfall, and that's a deraisa. And we see the people eat and drink right until it gets dark, and they don't add on. They're not Mekayim Teisus Yom Kippurim, and we don't say anything to them. We leave them. Elamai, you see that even by a deraisa, this is a case of a deraisa, And nevertheless, we say mutav shivashagim vayidam mezidim, and we don't say anything. The Rosh, however, says that that's only by something which is not ikr min Torah. The Taisus Yom Kippurim is not beferish in the Torah. We darshan from the pasuk Batish b'chodesh b'erev Tanus nafshe seichem. We make it from something that's mefurish in the Torah. The Rosh says that we would say, and we would give them asro, and we would not apply the principle of mutav yushaygim vayu mezidim. A woman can similarly, she can borrow loaves of bread from her friend, from her neighbor. As long as she doesn't say halveni, she can borrow it. So Gemara's medayik b'Shabbos who also. On Shabbos, you can't say halveni. Aval b'chol on weekdays, shapir domi. It's permitted to do it on weekdays. Leima masnis in the loike hillel desnan v'chein haye hillel aimer lo talvi isha kikar lechaverta ashta sena damim shemeyikru chitim v'nimse vo slidei ribis. Hillel says that a woman cannot lend a loaf of bread to her friend unless the value is assessed at the time of the loan or the borrowing, because we're concerned if it's not, then when she returns the item, it might have gone up in value. So for instance, let's say the bread is worth, just for argument's sake, $10. When she pays back, if the price of the wheat increased, if there was a sudden inflation, a huge inflation, and she returns the kikar, it'll be worth perhaps $11, and therefore the lender is getting more than was getting back more than what they lent out. Now there's a general Yisr de Rabban of Soh b'Soh. This is not Ribis D'Oraisa because at the time nothing is stipulated. There's no obligation to pay back a higher amount. There's nothing that is kotzutz. It's not Ribis D'Oraisa. But the Rabbanim were geyser aso for commodities for this type of situation because it has the appearance of ribis. If a person lends, let's say, he lends another one 10 bushels of wheat, and then the borrower pays back 10 bushels of wheat at a later date, and if that item is worth more, there it has the appearance of ribis. Rabbanim were not geyser by these types of items, household items like loaves of bread, because they're not usually lent out for long periods of time, and it's not likely that this would occur. But Hillel says, even a kicker, it can't be done unless the monetary value is set at the time of the lending. So when one each borrows a loaf of bread or a basket of bread from her friend, if they assess the value, they appraise it, says, okay, these loaves of bread are worth, whatever it is, $50. Then, at the time of paying back, if the price of wheat goes up, the borrower, it's not going to pay, if it goes up and it's worth now $60 or $100, the borrower is not going to pay back $100. The borrower will pay, we're not going to pay back bread worth $100. They'll simply pay $50 in cash. They'll pay $50 and they won't pay the higher amount. So if there's an assessment made at the time how much the value of this bread is, these loaves of bread are worth, then we're not concerned. Even if the price does go up, the borrower is not going to pay loaves of bread that are worth more. They'll pay the assessed value. But if it's not assessed, we're afraid, Hill says, that to pay back the loaves of bread, which are worth more, and that's included in the Rabbanan of Soh b'Soh. So therefore, he says you can't do it. But however, we see from our Mishnah that an Isha could borrow kikaras as long as she doesn't say halveni. She could borrow it on Shabbos if she doesn't say halveni, and which means by chol it's mutter even if she does say halveni. So therefore, apparently, our Mishnah is not like Hillel. Now, why is it only a kasha b'chol? It's mutter even to say halveni. On Shabbos itself, why are we asking kasha only from the diuk? We're asking kasha from the diuk. On Shabbos, she cannot borrow if she says halveni. B'chol, she can borrow if she says halveni. So you see, Bechol, on a weekday, that you can borrow with Halveni. Isn't that not like Hillel? Well, why isn't it a kasha on Shabbos itself? On Shabbos itself, even if you don't say Halveni, you say She'ela. Even if you don't say Halveni, but it's still a mutter to borrow it, so the Rishonim, the Ramban, the Rashba, they answer that if you're using a lashon of not halva, it indicates a short period of time. And a very short period of time of repayment, then we don't have this concern of inflation, of a drastic increase or a sudden increase in price. So it wouldn't be such a kasha from there, but from the whole, when you use a lashon of halveni, that's mashma a longer period of time. Why are we asking only from the case of the Isha? Why don't we ask from the Reisha of the Mishnah? The Reisha of the Mishnah seems to be clear. Kada yain and kada shema. You can say the Reisha of the Mishnah says that you are allowed to borrow kada yain, pitchers of oil and wine, that vachla yomer alveni. So why is it only a question from the case of the Isha? Rabbi Kiveger answers because in the case of the kada yain and shemen, it can be determined what the value was. You don't have to make an appraisal. You know, there's a standard size of a pitcher and what the price was at the time. So even if there is an increase in price, right, so Hill is not that concerned because over there, it's as if there was an appraisal. Because you know that at that time, when the borrowing took place, there was a standard pitcher of wine or oil, what the price was worth. But the kikaris we're not talking by, in this case with the woman, that there were standard loaves of bread that sold in the bakery, or challahs that, a basket of bilkas that have a certain set price. We're talking where an Isha, she bakes her own bread. Every woman baked it with different size, different weights, different forms, different shapes. So there's no standardization over there. By a pitcher of wine and oil, there's a standardized price. So if the price goes up, then the borrower will not pay back the pitcher of oil and wine at the high, which was worth more, which has a higher value, will simply pay the dollar value of what it was at the time of the borrowing. So if they borrow a pitcher of wine, and let's say it's worth, for argument's sake, let's say it's worth $50. If a pitcher of wine goes up to $60, they won't pay back as a pitcher of wine that's worth $60. They'll pay $50 in cash, but the loaves of bread don't have a standardized value. That's why it has to be assessed. Al kol panim, let us say the Mishnah is not like Hillel. The Gemara answers no. Afil tema Hillel. You could say our Mishnah is like Hillel as well. Ha ba'asr the kids dameh, ha ba'asr the like kids dameh. This very point that we've just mentioned, Hillel's consideration, his concern is only where there is not a fixed price for the loaf of bread. So Hillel's talking in a case where they have each, as we described, each woman bakes the bread differently, etc. So there's no set price for what the value of the loaf of bread is. Therefore, when it comes time to repayment, it's not known unless they make an assessment. It's not known what the value is, and therefore a woman will return a loaf of bread perhaps that has a higher value. But our Mishnah is talking where there's, for instance, like bakery breads or loaves, which have a standard price. There's a set price, there's a standard size and weight, and it has a set price, and therefore there's no concern because at the time of repayment, if the value of the bread goes up, the borrower will pay the cash value, what the dollar amount value is worth at the time of the borrowing, and will not pay the higher value of the loaves of bread. A loan that was made on Yontiv, Rav Yosef Amar, lo nitna li tova. Rav Yosef says you cannot go and sue in court. If the borrower does not pay back, Beis Din will not deal with the case. The borrower has a chiyuv to pay, but if it was a halva that was made on Yontiv, then Beis Din does not interfere, and you cannot sue the debtor. The creditor cannot sue the debtor in court. The Rabbah says no. Nitna li tova, it's like a regular loan in that respect, and you could take him to court. Rav Yosef Amar lo nitna li tova. Rav Yosef says lo nitna li tova. The Amrit nitna li tova asal mechta. Rav Yosef says no, you can't sue in court because if you could, then we're afraid asal mechta. Meaning, even if it's a case where it's shehashileni, even if he didn't use the lashon of halveini, which we are normally afraid to write down. Even if he used the lashon of she'ela, but still, nevertheless, if one could sue in court, we're afraid he'll write it down so that he'll have a record of it, so that if the debtor doesn't pay, he has a record and he can now be demand and be tovei and bezdin. So therefore, we say that you shouldn't write it down. Rav Arman nitna litava, he says no, it's like a regular loan. The amrat loy nitna, because if you're going to say that the amrat loy nitna, that it's not loy yoiv, like you won't lend it to vasel nuim misimchas yontav. If you're not going to let him sue in court, then we're afraid that in that type of a case he won't lend, because since he can't take him to court, we're afraid he won't lend, and therefore it is nitna litava. Meaning, if you want to make this gzeira that you're geyser because you're afraid he's going to write it down, then we're afraid that he won't even lend him. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, he says if he doesn't trust him, he gives a talis to be as a security. If you say that if you can't sue in court, that's why we understand that he has a talis as security, because if you can't take him to court, so how can he ensure that he gets his money back? So that's why he leaves a talis. And he makes a cheshbon after Shabbos. But if you say that he can take him to court, why should he leave the cloak? Why with the lender? Let the lender give him what he needs, and then if he doesn't pay up, if the debtor doesn't pay up, then take him to court. Why over here do we need this type of security? No, it's not a right, our discussion. Really, I'll tell you that he could take him to court. Isn't it only Tova? Why does he leave the talis over there? Why does he want this extra security? Because he doesn't want the bother of going to Bezdin. He doesn't want the whole tircha and the bother of going to Bezdin and fighting it out. This way he knows he has the security, but it has no bearing on our discussion whether it's nitali tov or not. If a person shach sapor and he gives out portions on Rosh Hashanah, so he shachs the animal, he gives out portions. Now there, after Yom Tov, supposed to pay him for the portions of the payment that he gives to them. So we know that the din is that Shemitah wipes out loans. So this is considered to be, in effect, as a type of a loan. And according to this Tana, it is considered to be a loan. Not everybody, not all the Tanaim hold this way. But according to this Tana, this is considered to be a type of a loan. And therefore, if the Shemitah year comes, it would wipe out that obligation to pay. So now, if he shechs the poor and he's chiluk Rosh Hashanah, im haya chodesh mu'ubar, if the month of Elul is a full month, meaning you have 2 days Rosh Hashanah. If the first day, if Elul is mu'ubar, that means the first day is the 30th day of Elul. So it's really, Elul is really part of the prior year. Then the second day of Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei, is the new year. So that means that the loan, so to speak, this buying on credit, was done in the prior year, was done in Elul. Now, if the loan was done in the prior year, in Elul comes the next day, which is already the new year, and it wipes out the loan. Then Shemitah comes and wipes out the loan. But if the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei, then the loan was not made in the prior year. The loan is made in the new year, so then Shemitah doesn't wipe out the loan, because Shemitah wipes out prior year's loans, not the coming year's loan. So therefore, if the month of Elul was full, then Mishamet. Then the Shemitah year, then the next day comes, then is the first day of Tishrei, and it wipes out the prior year's loan. But v'im lav, if it was not, meaning that that El only had 29 days, so therefore the first day of Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei. In a Meshamet, it doesn't wipe out the debt because it's not a prior year's loan. Now, now this was a loan that was made on Yom Tov. This was dividing up the animal. This was buying on credit. It was made on Yom Tov. So this was a Yom Tov Dik loan. Now, if you say in Lo Nitna Litova that you can't take it to Bezdin, my Meshamet, what's the meaning of that it cancels the loan? You can't take it to Bezdin anyway. If you're telling me a Yom Tov loan is a Yom Tov loan you can't take to Bezdin, then what does it mean that if it comes, then if it's a prior years, if El is Mole, then it wipes out the loan. The loan is wiped out anyway, because you can't collect a Yom Tov Dik loan. So there's no meaning to it. It's a Meshamet or not Meshamet. What's enough Kamina? It says if it was Mole, if the Chodesh Meubar, if it was not Meubar, it's Meshamet or not Meshamet. It's irrelevant because it's a Yom Tov Dik loan. It would have been wiped out anyway. So the Ran explains that, what do you mean, Poshet, there's enough Kamina. There's enough Kamina. It's if we say a Yom Tov Dik loan is Lo Nitna Litova, all that means is that you can't sue in Bezdin, but the obligation is there. But if Shemitah is Meshamet alone, then it wipes off the obligation. You don't even have an obligation to pay. So of course there's enough Kamina. So the Ran says at this point, what we're assuming what Meshamet means by Shemitah Dik alone doesn't mean that it wipes it out completely. It doesn't mean it cancels it completely. It just means that you can't take the Bezdin. Now the Maskona, we don't say that. But at this point in the Gemara, that's what the assumption is. So if that's the case, then for the Gemara, if you're telling me that the Yom Tov Dik alone is Lo Nitna Litova, what's enough Gemara if it's Meshamet or not? The Gemara answers, Shaini Halsam Digloi Milsa Dechoku. No, it comes out that if it's a Chodesh is Meubar, then it comes out that the first day of Rosh Hashanah was really Chol. Now, if they kept it as a suffix in those days before they set the Luach, so they kept it that day. So sometimes it was the 30th of Elul, sometimes it was first day of Rosh Hashanah was Echad B'Tishrei. But if it comes out that Rosh Hashanah is on the 30th day of Elul, it comes out it wasn't even Yom Tov. So therefore, it's not a Yom Tov Dik alone. Meaning, Ostesis explains that when we say Lo Nitna Litova on a Yom Tov Dik alone, it's only that they were guys on a Zavada Yom Tov. But on a Safek Yom Tov, that they didn't make that takana that Lo Nitna Litova. So over here, if it comes out that it was a Chodesh that was Meubar, then it comes out that the first day of Rosh Hashanah was not really Yom Tov. It wasn't really Yom Tov Dik alone. So therefore, it is Nitna Litova in that case. It says, if Allah was not full, then the loan is not cancelled. If you say the loan is Nitna Litova, that's why it says that it's saying Meshamet, that it's not Meshamet, it doesn't wipe it out. And therefore you can sue in Bezdin. But if you're telling me that you can't sue in Bezdin anyway, Amai Eina Meshamed, what does it mean it doesn't cancel? It's canceled anyway. Our answer is no. What it means is, no, it's different. If you say that it's Lo Nitna Litova, but you can't sue in Bezdin, but the loan is still outstanding, the obligation is there, and when he pays back, then the creditor can take the money because he's owed the money. So but you mean to say that where it's canceled, the Shemitah is Meshamet, it cancels the loan, you can't take the money? But if he wants to give you the money, does it mean you can't take the money? Gemara says no. What we say now this is the Maskona of the Gemara, what do we mean by we say Meshamet? When we say Meshamet in this context is as follows. By when we say that the Shemitah cancels the debt, it means that you don't have an obligation to pay. The debtor doesn't have to pay. The creditor can receive it. But if he does receive the money, he has to say Meshamet. It's canceled. You don't have to pay. Seifa, loitzorach lamemer le'mishamadani. But in the Seifa, he doesn't have to say, I cancel the debt, because in the Seifa, the debt really is not canceled. Over there in the Seifa, the debt is not canceled. It's a yontif de loan is loy nitin leitova. He can't sue in Bezin, but the loan still exists. It's not like we learned in the Mishnah, someone pays back a loan during Shviyas, the creditor says, Mishamadani. He says, it's canceled, you don't have to pay. But if the debtor says, nevertheless, I want to pay it, then he's allowed to accept it. So this is the Dvar HaShmita, the words of the Shemitah, meaning you have to say that Mishamane, you have to say Shmi, you have to say Mishamane. If he wants to pay, he pays. Rav Avia Shakal Mashkaina. Rav Avia, what do we do in a Yontif Dik alone if it's apparently they held as Loy Nitna Litova? So Rav Avia Shal Mashkaina. Rava Bar Ula Mar Merume. So Rav Avia would take a mashkan, so therefore to ensure that he got paid back. Rava Bar Ula didn't take a mashkan, but after Yontav he would take something that belonged to the debtor, and therefore he would have some lien on it. Therefore he would take something that belonged to him, and therefore he'd be able to negotiate from a position of strength to get the money paid back. Some poskim want to learn out from here that therefore this means that we paskin loy nitna leitova, because we see these mises where they took a mashkan, their armarume, they made a certain type of trick in order to get paid back. So must be that they held loy nitna leitova. Other poskim hold that no, it's not a raya, because it just highlights that they did it lifnei mishur sadin. But really, Meikar then, it isn't a Leitova, so that is a discussion of the Paiskim. A person is allowed to be Makdish to designate the animal as Hektish if it's Yud Daled Nisan that falls out on Shabbos, or a Korban Chagiga that he has to bring on for every Yontif. He can be Makdish even on Shabbos, even on Yontif, even though normally it's not permitted to be Makdish things, to make things Kaddish. We don't make the Darim and the Dovais, but over here we do allow. We'll see in the Gemara Maskana what's particular about these cases. Name Messiah, let's bring a raya from the following. It says, V'chein Pesach, Yerushalayim Zechaliyas B'Shabbos. We learned that Erev Pesach that falls on Shabbos. The Mishnah says, "Manich till says lovin nightlas pischoi v'oisei my cheshbon lachar yontiv." So he says he can take the animal for the korban. He leaves his talis as a security, and he makes a cheshbon after the yontiv. He makes a cheshbon. So if he now is acquiring the korban Pesach on Shabbos, that means he's being makdish. So don't you see from here that it's mutter to be makdish the korban on Shabbos? Gemara says no, it's not a raya from here because we're not talking over here where he is the one, he bought the animal for the korban for his exclusive use. We're talking over here where there is a chabura and he's joining the other people in the chabura. So meaning the animal was already makudish. The other people in the chabura, in the group, they already makdish the animal. So he's not being makdish, he's just joining the group. That you can't join in a group to buy an animal for a yontiv. You can't join in a group that to be part of a group that buys the animal. So you see over here that you can't join in, and so how can you say that we're requiring that he's acquiring the animal? It means that he's joining the group. It's also to join the group over here. This is difficult because in any event, but our Mishnah says that you can acquire the animal for the Korban Pesach. That it says if Erev Shabbos, if Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, you can acquire the animal. So in any event, we see that our Mishnah does not agree with that. So it's not really a kasha on the teretz of man acherim imal pischai. So for that reason, Taisus has a different girsa. But I'll call upon him. The girsa, the way we have it here is, how can you say over here that you're Mamana Cherem al Pischa, it says, Ein Nimna al Behem B'tchil B'Yontiv. Initially, you're not allowed to join in with a group, to be part of a group, and to acquire an interest in the animal on Yontiv. Moran says, Shiny Hachem. Kevin the Rogaletzloi, Kiman Dimni Beme Koradami. What we're talking about over here is that Kevin the Rogaletzloi, he's accustomed to, normally he's part of the group. Normally he is part of the group, and therefore it's anticipated. So it's Kiman Dimni Beme Koradami. It's like already he registered beforehand. It's like he registered before because he's accustomed regularly to be part of this group. Well, it says clearly over here that you could be makdish the animal for the Pesach, because Rav Aisha learns that a person can go to the shepherd that he's accustomed to going to better get an animal from, and the shepherd gives him the lamb for the Korban Pesach. He says makdishai, he's makdish it v'yaitzavai, and his yaitze is chiyuv. So you see clearly he's makdish it. When it says no, Hasam Nami came in the Ragalasloi, Akdusha Makdish Mikora. We're talking the same type of idea, that since he is accustomed to going to the shepherd, he's a shepherd that he regularly goes to. The shepherd was Makdish it from before Shabbos. Makdish Katani, it says Makdish, that he's being, the purchaser is being Makdish it. Moran says Hektish Iloi Midrabanan. This is not Ikar Adin of the Hektish. Really, the shepherd was Makdish it from beforehand. But the Rabban or Mechayev, that when even if the animal was already Kodesh, the person who was bringing the Korban has to be Makdish it himself. He has to prepare, he has to say that this is Kodesh. So really, this is not making it Kodesh. It's already Makdish Mikara, but he's doing the Rabbanan Dikadin of Hektish Iloi, and that would be permitted on Shabbos. But you have no raya that making it mamish hektish midoraisa that's permitted on Shabbos. Rav Yochanan said that you could be makdish animals in Shabbos and Yom Tov. Is that so? Rav Yochanan says, generally speaking, the principle is halak kistam mishnah udnan, and we have a stam mishnah that says lo makdish v'lo marichim v'lo machrimin. You cannot make hektish or erech nedorim of erechin or charamim. You cannot make these types of nedorim on Shabbos. And so therefore, how can Rav Yochanan possibly say that you could be makdish the animal? The Stam Mishnah says, loy makdish, loy marech, loy machrimin, and loy makbim trus maises, kolel b'yontav amru, kal v'chaim Shabbos, not even on Yontav, certainly not on Shabbos. So how can Rav Yochanan say that you could be makdish? More answers that it's different. Like kasha, kan b'chayva shekavu lahem zman, kan b'chayva she'ein kavu lahem zman. Where did Rav Yochanan say that you could be makdish? That's, for instance, in the case that we're talking about in the Mishnah, that it's Erev Pesach shechal yos b'Shabbos. It's a kavu zman. You have to bring it on this day. The korban is doicha Shabbos. The hektish is also the Isser D'Rabbanan. To be makdish the animal is also doicha Shabbos. So if you have a korban that's kavua zman, or you have a chagiga on yontiv that you have to bring it for yontiv, then we say it's doicha. But a korban that's not kavua zman, to make nedorim and nedavim hekdeshus for voluntary korbanos that could be brought later, that don't have to be brought on this particular time. The korban's not doicha Shabbos or yontiv, so the hekdesh also is not doicha. So that's the chilik. The halach is the Stam Mishnah where it's not kavua zman. But Rav Yochanan said where it's a korban kavua zman, you could be makdish on Shabbos and yontiv.